Hi, everyone. My name is Struve, and before I get started, I want to point out that my Twitter handle is in the lower right-hand corner of all the slides, Molly_Struve. I have already tweeted out this slide deck, so if you'd like to follow along during the presentation, head over to Twitter and click on the SlideShare link. Welcome to Elasticsearch 5 and Bust. Currently, I'm the lead site reliability engineer for a blogging platform called dev.to. But the story I'm about to tell you today is actually from my time at my previous employer, Kenna Security. This story is a cautionary tale of what happens when you naively assume that your next upgrade will go just as smoothly as your previous one. TLDR, it's a bad idea to assume that. I could end the talk right there, but what fun would that be, since I know most of you came here for the gory details, and because, let's be honest, everyone loves a good look how we screwed up story. Better learn from others' mistakes than make them yourself, right? Don't worry, the juicy story is coming. But before I begin, I first want to give you a little bit of a background on Elasticsearch and Kenna so you can get the most out of this story. First, let's talk about Elasticsearch and the role it plays at Kenna Security. Elasticsearch is a data store that allows you to search over a large amount of data. Think millions of data points in seconds. So how does Kenna use Elasticsearch? Kenna is a cybersecurity company that helps Fortune 500 companies manage their cybersecurity risk. One of the defining features of Kenna is that we allow our clients to search through all their cybersecurity data in seconds, thanks to the help of Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch is really at the cornerstone of Kenna's platform, and what really sets Kenna apart from its competitors. This fact is what I want you to keep in mind as I'm telling this story, so you can grasp just how big of a deal what I'm about to tell you was for Kenna. So now that you understand how important Elasticsearch is for Kenna, I want to quickly go over some Elasticsearch lingo so that you can follow along as I tell this story. First off, there may be times when I refer to Elasticsearch as ES. Simply know, anytime I say ES, I'm simply referring to Elasticsearch in a shorthand manner. You will also hear me mention the word node. What is a node? A node is a server that is running Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch actually has a couple different types of nodes, but for the purpose of this presentation, all you need to know is that a node is a server running Elasticsearch. These nodes are then grouped together to form what we call a cluster. A cluster is a group of nodes that all work together to serve Elasticsearch requests. So now that you know about nodes and clusters, the last piece that needs a little bit of an explanation is the actual version upgrade itself. During the story, you will hear me talk about upgrading from Elasticsearch 2 to Elasticsearch 5. Now, despite the fact that the numbers jump by a value of 3, Elasticsearch version 5 is actually only a single version ahead of 2. At the time, Elasticsearch decided to update how they numbered their versions to match with the underlying language that powers it, which is why we see a number jump of 3, but the actual version jump is only 1. So now that you know the lingo, and you've got some background on Elasticsearch and Kenna, let's get to the good stuff. The story. The year was 2017. It was late March, and the time had come to upgrade our massive 21-node Elasticsearch cluster. Preparation had been underway for weeks, getting the code base ready for the upgrade. And everyone was super excited. Now, the reason we were all so excited was because when we upgraded from 1 to 2, we saw huge performance gains. So we couldn't wait to see what this upgrade had in store for us. We chose to do the upgrade on March 23rd in the evening. As you can see, March 23rd is a Thursday. We would often do upgrades on Thursdays because then we would have a work day, Friday, to sort out any issues, and no one would have to work into the weekend. So what did this upgrade involve? This upgrade involved a few different steps. First, we had to shut down the cluster. Then, we had to upgrade Elasticsearch on all of the nodes. After that, it was my job to deploy all of our Elasticsearch 5 code changes for our application. And last but not least, we had to start Elasticsearch back up again. All of these steps went off without a hitch. And as the night wore on, we were feeling pretty good about everything. Once all the nodes were turned back on, we took our application out of maintenance mode and decided to take it for a spin. However, when we did this, we started to see a bunch of CPU and load spikes on our nodes. This was a bit concerning and not a great sign, but the cluster was still doing some internal balancing, so we chalked it up to that and figured it'd be sorted out in the morning. So we decided to call it a night. This takes us to Friday, March 24th. In the morning, much to our dismay, we woke up to find that overnight, some of our Elasticsearch nodes had crashed. We were not quite sure why, but thought once again, it might have been due to that internal balancing, so once again, we dismissed it. We restarted the crashed nodes and continued to monitor the cluster. Everything was pretty dandy until about 9 a.m. when site traffic started to pick up. And once again, we saw more CPU and load spikes. And then, just like overnight, we saw nodes crash. Except this time, before we could restart the nodes, the entire cluster went down. At this point, we couldn't deny it anymore. Something was very wrong. So we immediately jumped into full-on debugging mode to try to figure out why the hell our cluster was suddenly hanging on by a thread. We started combing through logs and reading stack traces, trying to find any hint we could as to why this was happening. We tried Googling things like Elasticsearch 5 upgrade followed by cluster crash, Elasticsearch 5 cluster instability. Why does Elasticsearch 5 suck so much? Well, maybe not that last one. But seriously, we Googled everything we could think of, but no matter what we tried, we couldn't find anything that explained what we were seeing. We came up with a few theories on our own and tried some fixes, but none of them worked. By Friday afternoon, we decided to reach out for help and create a post on Elastic's Discuss Forum. Elastic's Discuss Forum is a website that I had used in the past to find answers when I had issues with Elasticsearch. So I figured it might be a good place to ask a question and see if anyone else had any idea what was going on. So after about an hour of gathering data, I put together our post. ES 2.4 to 5.2 upgrade followed by major cluster instability. We had no idea if anyone would answer. As most of you know, when you ask a question like this on a forum or Stack Overflow, either you're going to get an answer or you might just get crickets. Lucky for us, it was the former. Much to our surprise, someone did answer, and not just anyone. One of the senior engineers at Elastic, Jason Tedder. Not going to lie, we were a bit awe and starstruck when we found out one of the core developers of Elasticsearch was working on our case. The forum discussion in the post turned into a private email between us and Jason, with us sharing everything we could to try to help him figure out what was going on. This back and forth lasted all weekend and into the following week. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. During this time, our team was in a special level of hell. We were working 15-plus-hour days trying to figure out what was causing all of these issues, while at the same time doing everything we could to keep the application afloat. But no matter what we did, that ship just kept on sinking. And every time ES went down, we had to boot it back up again. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Elasticsearch is at the cornerstone of Kenna's platform. So as you might imagine, customers and management were not happy during this. Our VP of engineering was constantly getting phone calls and messages asking for updates. With no solution in sight, we started talking about the R word. Was it time to roll back? Unfortunately, we had no plan for this, but couldn't be that hard, right? Oh, how wrong we were in that assumption. We soon learned once we had upgraded, we couldn't actually roll back. Surprise! Though not quite the surprise we were hoping for. In order to return to Elasticsearch 2, we would have to stand up an entirely new cluster with Elasticsearch 2 and then copy all of our data from the Elasticsearch 5 cluster into the Elasticsearch 2.1. We calculated, given all of our data, this would take us 5 days to do, which was not good news considering we had already been down for almost a week. However, with no other good options, we stood up the new cluster with Elasticsearch 2, and we started the slog of copying all of our data into it. Then Wednesday, March 29th rolled around. At this point, the team was exhausted, but we were still working hard trying to get Kenna back on its feet. And that's when it happened. We finally got the news we had been waiting for. Jason, the Elasticsearch engineer helping us, sent us a message saying he had found a bug. Hallelujah. Turns out the bug he found was in the Elasticsearch source code, and he had found it thanks to the information we had given him. He immediately issued a patch to Elasticsearch and gave us a workaround to use until that patch was merged and officially released. When I implemented the workaround, it was like night and day. The cluster immediately stabilized, which you can see on these two graphs. The top graph shows node JVM heap levels, and the ideal pattern is that nice, calm sawtooth you see to the right of the line. The bottom graph shows our garbage collection times. Garbage collecting should not take a lot of time, and as you can see, after the workaround is deployed, it goes right back down to normal levels where it should be. At this point, our team was so happy, I think everyone cried. The battle we had been fighting for nearly a week was finally over. But even though the incident was over, the learning had just begun. Because while it makes for a great story to tell over drinks, as you can imagine, our team learned a few things from that upgrade. And that's the real reason why I'm here today, to share those lessons learned with you so you don't have to go through the nightmare my team and I did during your next big software upgrade. So without further ado, let's get right to it. First, lesson learned. Have a rollback plan. When doing any sort of upgrade, you must know what rolling back in the event of a problem entails. Can you roll back the software in line? If you can't roll it back in line, how would you handle rolling back to the original version? How long and hard will a rollback be? If it's going to take a long time, that might be something you want to prepare for ahead of time. Basically, you need to worst case scenario the shit out of that upgrade, so you're prepared for anything. That way, if and when something comes up, you have a plan. It can be really easy as a software engineer for us to just focus on our code. The code for the Elasticsearch 5 upgrade could have been rolled back with a simple revert PR. But we never considered if the Elasticsearch software and data itself could be rolled back. And that was a huge mistake. So the first lesson learned is have a rollback plan. The second lesson we learned was to do performance testing. We went into this upgrade with some very wrong assumptions. One of which was, since the last upgrade was great, this one will be too. Software only gets better, right? Yeah, I hear some of you laughing out there because you know as well as I do that that's a load of crap. But because of that blind assumption, we never did any heavy performance testing. We validated that all the code worked with the new version of Elasticsearch, and that was it. Always, always test new software. I don't care what kind of software you're upgrading to. I don't care how stable and widely used that software is. You have to performance test it. While the software as a whole might look good and stable to 99% of its users, you never know if your use case might be that small piece that has a bug, or might be that small piece that's unoptimized. Many companies have been running Elasticsearch 5 when we upgraded to it, but none of them ran into the particular bug we did. Since the outage, we've implemented a testing strategy that allows us to send requests to multiple clusters in order to test their performance. So we can use that whenever we're making big cluster changes now. So to avoid any surprises during your next upgrade, make sure you do performance testing. The next lesson we learned from this whole debacle was don't ignore small warning signs. Now, this is not something I covered in the initial story because it actually happened well before the upgrade took place. But when we were initially working on the code changes for this upgrade, we did all of the testing locally. And during that testing, we ended up crashing Elasticsearch on our local environments multiple times. Once again, we figured there was no way it could be an issue with the software. It had to be our issue with our configuration or settings. So we tweaked our settings and our configuration to make it stable, and then went about on our way making code changes. In hindsight, ignoring that small warning sign was probably the biggest miss. But once again, our trust in the software and our past experiences twisted our bias so much that we never thought the problem could be with Elasticsearch. If you get small warning signs, investigate, dig further. Don't just get it into a working state and assume it's going to be fine, because it probably won't be. Make sure you understand what is happening before you dismiss a warning sign as not important. Okay, so this gives us 3 lessons learned. Unfortunately, all of these lessons were learned the hard way by not following them during this upgrade. Now, I want to shift gears because these next 3 lessons are things that actually went incredibly well during the upgrade. And when I look back on the whole experience, it's pretty easy to see that if these next 3 lessons had not gone well, the fallout from the upgrade could have been way worse. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking, excuse me? Way worse? You were down for nearly a week. How does it get worse than that? It could. And I think that will become clear with these next 3 lessons. So, number 4 on my list of lessons learned, use the community. Never discount the help that can be found within the community, whether it's online or simply calling up a former coworker. It can be hard and scary to ask for help sometimes. No one wants to be the one to ask that question there's a one-line answer to. But don't let that stop you. Wouldn't you rather have that one-line answer than to be chasing your tail for hours or days? This is one aspect of the upgrade that I thought our team did very well. The day after the upgrade, we immediately reached out to the community for help by posting on Elastic's Discuss forum. It took me maybe an hour to write that post, but it was by far probably the most valuable hour of the entire upgrade because that is what got us our answer. Many people will reach out to the community as a last resort. I'm here to tell you, don't wait until you're at the end of your rope. Don't wait until you've suffered through days of downtime. Before you get to the end of your rope and you find your back against the wall, ask, because you might save yourself and your team a whole lot of struggle and frustration in the process. I am very proud that we turned to the community almost immediately, and it paid off. Sure, it might not pay off every single time, but it's so simple to ask, why not do it? Worst case scenario, it'll allow you to organize your thoughts around your debugging efforts. So before your back is against the wall, remember to use the community. Number 5 on my list of lessons learned is yet another one we nailed during this upgrade, and that is leader and management support are crucial. During any high-risk software upgrade, change, or otherwise, the leadership and management team you have backing your engineers is extremely important. When you look at this outage story as a whole, it's easy to focus on the engineers and everything they did to fulfill the upgrade. One of the key reasons we as engineers were able to do our jobs as well as we were was because of our VP of engineering. It wasn't just the engineers in the trenches on this one. Our VP of engineering was right there with us the entire way. He was up with us late into the evenings and online at the crack of dawn every single day during the incident. He was not only there to offer help technically, but more importantly, he was our cheerleader. There were many times when our team just wanted to throw in the towel and give up, but he kept encouraging us and pushing us because he truly believed we would figure it out. In addition to being our cheerleader, he was also our defender. He fielded all calls and messages from upper management, which allowed us to focus on getting things fixed. We never had to worry about talking or explaining ourselves to anyone because he handled it all. He shielded us from all the additional worry and panic that the other stakeholders were experiencing during the outage. And above all else, Our VP never wavered in his trust that we would figure it out. He was the epitome of calm, cool, and collected the entire time, which is what kept pushing us forward. His favorite saying is fail forward, and he never showed that more than during this Elasticsearch outage. Today, fail forward is one of the cornerstone values in Kenna's engineering culture, and we use this story as an example of that. If we had had a different VP, I am sure things would have turned out very differently. So for those of you who are sitting in this room who are VPs, those of you who are managers, those of you who are C-suite executives, listen up. You may not be the ones pushing the code, but I guarantee the role you play is much larger and much more crucial in these types of scenarios than you know. How you react is going to set the example for the rest of the team. Be their cheerleader. Be their defender. Be whatever they need you to be for them. But above all else, trust that they can do it. That trust will go a long way towards helping the team believe in themselves. And that is crucial for keeping morale up, especially during a long-running incident such as this one was. Okay, now back to that lesson learned list. Last, but definitely not least, I want to highlight the incredible team of engineers that I worked with throughout this upgrade. It goes without saying that during any big software upgrade, change, or otherwise, your team matters. Being a developer or engineer is not just about working with computers. You also have to work with people. This outage really drove that point home for me. It was a team of 3 of us. Actually, wait a second. Yep, that's a little bit more accurate of the 3 of us during this outage. Anyways, it was a team of 3 of us, and we were working 15-plus-hour days trying to get everything fixed, and it was brutal. We went through every emotion in the book, from sad to angry to despondent. But rather than these emotions breaking us down, they bonded us together. Everyone helped everyone out. We all supported each other when needed. This was a big aha moment for me, because it made me realize that character is everything in a time of crisis. You can teach people tech. You can show them how to code. You can instill good architectural principles in their brains, but you can't teach character. When you are hiring, look at the people you're interviewing. Really get to know and assess if they're someone you would want to be back against the wall fighting a fire with. Will they jump in when you need them to? No questions asked. If the answer to that is yes, hire them, because that is not something you can teach. And with that, our list of lessons learned is complete. On the technical side, you have a rollback plan. Do performance testing, and don't ignore the small warning signs. On the non-technical side of the equation, use the community. Remember that leader and management support are crucial. And finally, know that your team matters a lot. If I'm being honest, while the technical side is important, I firmly believe that these last 3 points are probably the most important. And the reason I say this is because you can have a rollback plan. You can do performance testing. You can take note and investigate every little warning sign that pops up. But in the end, there will still be times when things go wrong. It's inevitable in our line of work. Things are going to break. But if when things go wrong, you use the community and have the right team and leadership in place, you will be fine. You can survive any outage or high-stress scenario that comes your way if you remember to put into practice these 3 non-technical lessons. The Elasticsearch outage of 2017 is infamous at Kenna Security these days, but not in the way that you would think. As brutal as it was for the team, and as bad for business as it was at the time, it helped us build the foundation for the Kenna engineering culture. It gave everyone a story to point to that said, this is us. What happened there? That's who we are. With that in mind, I think there's a bonus lesson here, and that is embrace your mistakes. And when I say you're here, I mean you personally, and I also mean your team and your company. This outage was caused by a team miss. We own that, and we embrace that. Often in our industry, outages and downtime are taboo. And when they happen, someone's blamed, possibly fired, we write a postmortem about it, and then we quickly shove it under the rug, and we hope everyone forgets about it. That's not how it should work. I firmly believe that embracing outages and mistakes is the only way we can really learn from them. Sharing these stories with others and being open about them benefits everyone. I'm sincerely grateful that RubyConf chose to have the hindsight track because learning from these mistakes and outages is going to make us all better engineers. The next time you have a big upgrade looming in your future, remember these 6 lessons so that you can prepare your code and your team to make the upgrade the best experience possible. I sincerely hope that what we learned at Kenna will prevent others from having an outage such as we did. But in the event that an outage does occur, for any reason, whether it's an upgrade or not, embrace it, learn from it, and share it with others. Thank you all for your time and attention. Great question. So the question was, how long had Elasticsearch 5 been out when we ran into that problem? I believe at the time it had been out, I think it was just under a year. So yeah, we went to 5.2. Once the patch was pushed and released, we upgraded to 5.4 to get all that stuff fixed. But in hindsight, it was probably a little bit early, and so this next upgrade that we're going to do is we've waited a little bit longer for ES6 to let it bake a little bit. What's the bug? Okay, so the question was, what was the Elasticsearch bug? So for those of you who use Elasticsearch, there's 2 types of queries you can do. You can do a query where it scores everything. As you can imagine, scoring documents is a lot of work. Or you can just do a query that says, does it match, does it not? If it does, put it over there. This bug basically took all of our non-scoring queries and turned them into scoring ones. So basically, Elasticsearch had to do all of this extra work suddenly that it never had to do in the past, and that's why it kept falling over. So there you go. Use filters. So the question was, I use filters a lot in Elasticsearch. How did no one notice this before? So the actual bug itself was in filters in aggregations. So aggregations is this kind of little special feature you can use to group documents in Elasticsearch. Well, not a lot of people filter their aggregations, I guess, or they don't filter a lot of them, because no one else had run into it until we did. And they found it basically because we gave Jason a heap dump, and in that he was able to go through that heap and see all of these scoring queries, and then look at our code and realize those weren't supposed to be scored. Anyone else? Okay, well, if anyone wants to talk to me afterwards, Elasticsearch, dev.to, anything, come up. Thanks.